Hi everyone, Anthony Cobb Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Jessie Ware album, That Feels Good. This is the fifth full-length LP from pop singer and songwriter Jessie Ware, back with a follow-up to her surprise smash record, What's Your Pleasure? My 2020 album of the year, and one of her most successful releases to date. So successful it made her reconsider hanging up the microphone for good, which she discussed in a recent interview we had. So why did What's Your Pleasure stir up the commotion that it did? First off, it was a pretty bold change in styles from Jessie's last three records, which dabbled mostly in pop soul and very smooth and elegant R&B. And Jessie is also no stranger to dance music, of course, with her vocals having been featured on many an electronic cut and DJ mix. But the grooves she was going for on What's Your Pleasure were much more vintage by nature. We're talking old school synth funk, electro disco, boogie, freestyle, synth pop, to a real gamut of classic styles that culminated in a fun, sexy, catchy dance odyssey that for sure was nostalgic but had a modern punch to it too. Plus the production was fantastic, the songwriting was on point too. The stars really aligned on this project. Now, considering what a watershed moment this record was for Jessie, what choice did she have other than to give the fans more? With a deluxe edition of the album that had some great extra tracks, and now That Feels Good, which is very clearly related to its predecessor based off title alone, as it kind of answers What's Your Pleasure's question. And this project sounds like a sister record too, as the sonics of this thing still sit pretty tightly in the realm of disco and old school dance music, but this time Miss Ware and her collaborators are treating us to something that is a lot bolder, brighter, tighter, especially since this is a shorter record in terms of tracks and runtime, just by a little bit. But what this thing doesn't have in expansive and hypnotic dance passages, it makes up for in punch, which is apparent from the opening title track. That kicks things off with a lot of sensual vocal layers, repeating the song title, and a hard funk bass line that locks it in very nicely with the drums. There are some spicy hot horn sections swelling into the mix here and there too. From the first beats to the epic bridge to the kind of sassy group vocal passages at the very end, the song is a nonstop party. Really an anthem for letting the intrusive thoughts win. The following track, Free Yourself by comparison, is more of a purist's disco anthem, even if the beats are a bit punchier than the classic stuff, and some of the transitions from point to point in the song resemble that of like a house cut. Once again, Jessie and her collaborators kind of nail that balance between sounding old but sounding new, doing so with thumping kicks and soaring lead vocals and bright string hits. The whole thing sounds so cinematic, I feel like I'm in a movie just listening to it. Then Pearls is another very ornately arranged dance rager, but this time I would say a bit more cheeky, not just in terms of the more playful grooves and everything, but also lyrics that talk about dancing to the point where pearls or some bits of jewelry on you are just falling off, which is clever, a little silly, but it's really Miss Ware's killer vocal performance that kind of dominates on this one, especially as she hits those high notes on Lost and Romance, Let's Just Dance. Okay, let me try to do it. Let's just dance! I cannot hit those notes. Which is one of a few really good melodic ideas flying at you all at once on the track, be it the shouty shake it till the pearls fall off refrains or the la 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 la. Like if one of those little hooks doesn't grab you, the other two will. Hello Love is a great cool down moment on the record, more of a ballad, one that is a vintage piece of string-kissed soul, kind of a groovy beat on the back end, with lyrics about running into a former lover and kind of catching feelings all over again. There are some clever pieces of wordplay in the lyrics too, like I thought tonight would just be me, myself, and I-ing. The track's classy, refined, sweet, well written. Love it. But then Begin Again, which was another single from the album, is really like the anthem of the record. The beat on this one moves with a purpose. Once again, the instrumentation sounding cinematic as hell. You also have these chromatic descending lines that have kind of a sour tone to them and feel a bit Latin too. Plus the biggest display of strings, horns, and group vocals. The track sounds larger than life, but the lyrics are based on some very simple asks, with Jessie talking about having progressed to a point where she's working too much, or how the current state of of love sees affection being filtered through machines. And she laments the direction things have moved in and wishes to begin again, go back to the start. It's a high watermark on the album, in my opinion, one that the record never quite reaches again, not just in terms of messaging, but also instrumental display, which could just be a sequencing issue or the record offering too much too early, because things do kind of coast down from here, in my opinion, but not too much. I am a little torn on the funk instrumentation and silly spoken word passages on Beautiful People. There are some notes of sadness in the lyrics, but the track mostly seems to be an embrace of being happy, being positive. The song does hit a stride around the midpoint, but I do think the first leg of it sounds a little bit like, I don't know, an advertisement for luxury clothing or hard liquor, and I'm not entirely sold on it. Freak Me Now, though, sees Jessie and her collaborators making a classic 90s house bop with the shouty diva vocals and everything, which is a surprising switch up given the aesthetics of the record so far, but I would say the vibe is nailed perfectly. The kicks go hard, the synth bass is insanely thick, the lyrics mention being heated up, cooled down, freaked. Not exactly a refreshing spin on this style, but I feel like it's done so well it could potentially go toe-to-toe with some of the best tracks from back in the day. Then Shake the Bottle is another cut I'm a bit torn on, as I think the hook is slightly tacky, the innuendo of it I think is just too on the nose. But with that being said, I do love the quirky electronics hanging in the background on the verses, and the theatrical bits of storytelling and sound play that kind of tell us all about these various lovers Jessie is talking about on the song. It's just super creative and reminds me of like some obscure electro and club gems from the late 70s and early 80s. Then from here we have an okay ending on the LP. Lightning is another low-key and sensual moment on the record, this time giving us a very synthetic, chill piece of pop soul that for sure is out of step with everything on the album thus far, but I guess feels like kind of a throwback to something from Jessie's first 3 records. Maybe longtime fans of Jessie will be more thrilled than me to hear her kind of touch back on this. Then there's These Lips, which I do think ties things up nicely in a big, groovy, sexy bow. The huge string sections and vocal harmonies are back. There are some stellar tumbling horn lines on the song that kind of transition us from one point to another, and the song essentially serves as the supreme ode to sensuality and touch, which for a record like this is a pretty valid way to bow out. I will say I loved this album overall. I think it's great, a lot of bops on it, but I will say I did not find this record to be as consistent or as thorough in terms of exploring its aesthetics and its theme as its predecessor. And while for sure this album is its own record and can be enjoyed in a vacuum, in a way it does feel a little bit like a very long epilogue post What's Your Pleasure. All things considered on this album, I'm feeling a decent 8 on it. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up with a link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Jessie Ware. That feels good forever.